To the Point with Michael Williams.
But know this, America, our problems can be solved. Our challenges can be met. The path we offer may be harder, but it leads to a better place, and I'm asking you to choose that future.
President Obama makes his case for re-election, and one of his first stops is in West Palm Beach as he tries to win a second term. Good morning and welcome. I'm John Shainman. Michael Williams out today recovering from 2 political conventions in 2 weeks. So last week we had a Democrat on to talk about the Republican convention. This week we have a Republican to talk about the Democrats. Our guest is Sid Dinerstein. He is the chairman of the Republican Party in Palm Beach County. Mr. Dinerstein, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you for inviting me, John. Always a pleasure.
First question, okay, what did you think of the Democrat show last week?
I was thrilled. Actually, as happy as I was after I got back from Tampa, and I was like flying, not to mention walking on balloons. By the time last night came and then the Friday jobs report came, I'm like, oh my God, we had 2 conventions. The Democratic convention was framed. At the beginning of the week, it started with the $16 trillion that they have left to our children and forgot to mention in every one of their speeches. And at the end of the week, 368,000 people dropped out of the labor force. Four people dropped out for every job that they say they created. And it just framed the whole convention. No success, no chance of success. And America got to see that. So I was thrilled with that. I was thrilled with something else. You know, I always thought that we would get help from the Occupy people who would be out in the streets causing trouble for the Democrats. I was wrong. The Occupy people are the delegates. And I was floored, like all of America was, at their passion about making sure we removed God from America, that we removed Jerusalem from Israel, and that, with the help of our own Mark Allen Seagal, that we removed Christianity from our culture.
We're going to get to Mr. Seagal's comments in just a moment. Now, the president hadn't even left the convention when we heard that he's going to come to West Palm Beach this weekend. So how pivotal do you see our area in this election?
You know, I hate to take a minority position, but I've been saying for 2 years, Florida's not a toss-up state. The president has no chance of winning the state. And after this past week, he has less. What happened that made the state, took the state, in my opinion, off the table was Paul Ryan. The media, don't take this personally, John, for 2 years refused to tell the public that to fund Obamacare, we had to take $700 billion out of Medicare. Once Paul Ryan got picked, the whole discussion, the cards got face up. And we learned 2 things. The seniors learned 2 things. One, $700 billion is coming out of Medicare if you re-elect President Obama. And 2, the Ryan plan affects nobody.
Nobody now.
Nobody over the age of 55. And specifically does affect the 54 and under because there's no other way that there can be Medicare. So this was unreported for 2 years until we picked Paul Ryan. The seniors are looking at this. The polling among Florida seniors is extraordinarily positive for our side.
So you certainly think that this is going to be a red state at this point?
Oh, yeah. And I think by the end of September, the Obama administration will kind of make the moves so that you media folks get that message.
All right, we shall see. Well, Vice President Joe Biden made a statement that I'm sure we're going to hear often. Let's take a listen.
We can now proudly say what you've heard me say the last 6 months. Osama bin Laden is dead and General Motors is alive.
All right, that got a lot of applause there in Charlotte. What is the Republican rebuttal to that?
No rebuttal. He's half right. Osama bin Laden is dead. President Obama deserves credit for getting that job finally done. Took us many, many years. Not as much credit as the men and women who are in harm's way for this country on that mission and every day. They didn't get to mention last night that more of our soldiers have died in Afghanistan under President Obama than under President Bush. But the second half is not quite right. General Motors is on life support. They owe the country $25 billion. Their stock is in the toilet. And it's all because the deal that Barack Obama shoved down everybody's throat meant that the cost structure for General Motors going forward would keep them uncompetitive. So they are no longer competitive. They are suffering. They're hemorrhaging.
The jobs, though, what about the jobs that were saved?
The jobs that were saved were going to be saved. You have to remember, General Motors went into bankruptcy anyway. They were going into bankruptcy with or without our children having to pay back China for the money that we borrowed, okay? But they could have come out of bankruptcy with a lower pay structure, a lower pension obligation, and more competitive. You know, the auto industry in the southern half of this country, in the South, remains thriving. No bailouts, no president ruining it.
Now, you would blame that on the unions. A lot of those southern auto shops are non-union, correct?
No, I blame it on President Obama. He personally interfered to change the law to put the unions ahead of the bondholders. Nobody else gets credit. We have in America a bankruptcy system that has worked for 200 years. It didn't need his help. If it had been allowed to work, not only would we have all the jobs, we would be hiring. But he felt that his obligation was not to Detroit or America, but to the union that sends him their campaign contributions.
All right, well, former President Bill Clinton framed the election. And what kind of society do you want? Let's hear from him.
When we vote in this election, we'll be deciding what kind of country we want to live in. If you want a winner-take-all, you're on your own society, you should support the Republican ticket. But if you want a country of shared opportunities and shared responsibility, we're all in this together society, you should vote for Barack Obama and Joe Biden.
All right, what a lot of the commentators, Sid, were talking about is that perhaps former President Clinton's speech was a better speech than President Obama's speech. What do you make of the former president's reaction?
I think Bill Clinton had one major objective, and that was make the Democrats miss him. So the people are in the audience saying, oh my God, instead of having Barack Obama, who came with no experience and hasn't learned very much, against Mitt Romney, who's one of our best and our brightest, couldn't we have Bill Clinton against George Bush? And they're not getting that. So that was Bill Clinton's objective. If you read the book, The Amateur, #1 book, where most of the book are quotes by Democrats, the nickname The Amateur was given to Barack Obama by Bill Clinton. And in the book, they talk extensively about how Bill and Chelsea Clinton tried so hard to get Hillary to run against Barack Obama in these primaries. So Bill was out there being Bill, and did a very, very good job, and we're all happy for him.
Well, again, his job was really there to get the base motivated, don't you think? I mean...
No, the job was to tell everybody that I'm Bill Clinton and aren't I wonderful.
All right, well, Sid, here, another topic that we did want to talk about. Your colleague on the other side of the aisle, calls being made for Palm Beach County Democratic Party Chairman Mark Allen Seagal to resign after he made these comments in an interview at the convention. Listen.
The Christians just want us to be there so we can all be slaughtered and converted and bring on the second coming of Jesus Christ.
Now, wait a minute. Now, where do you...
All right, well, Seagal is taking a leave of absence from his Democratic Party chairman's job. He issued an apology, Seagal claiming that he used ill-chosen words. Here's part of what he said. He said, I apologize to all Christians, Jews, and other people of faith for any embarrassment or anger that my remarks may have caused. Well, Sid, I mean, what did you think when you heard him make those comments?
First off, I may have been the first person in the county who got the YouTube the other night. And 10 minutes after I got it, about 30 people like you had it in their inbox because I thought it was worthy of sharing. That's number one. Number two, I give Mark Allen Seagal, for one, being honest about his personal feeling and recognizing that he speaks for a lot of other Democrats, because this absurd story that my Christian friends heard, I've heard many times before, and each time from a Jewish Democrat. So they live in this echo chamber where they tell this to each other. And they say, oh, the evil Christians are coming. I think in a week where the Democrats were so loud in being anti-God and anti-Israel, it should not surprise anybody as to how anti-Christian they are. The Democratic religion is atheism, but it's atheism without tolerance for any other religion. And So he took the fall.
And now, do you think that because of what had happened during the party platform? Is that why you're making that statement?
No, I think that because I've known these people for chairman for 10 years. And I've heard this for 10 years. In 2004, when I would go to my Jewish Democratic friends and say, you know, Ariel Sharon said that George Bush is the best friend Israel ever had. Why won't you vote for him? And the answer was, because you have all those Christians. Okay? So this is how a lot of them think, and maybe we should ask more of them. The reason this was such a good convention for us is the Democrats, all being in the same place, couldn't contain themselves and actually showed who they are and showed America who they are. And quite frankly, we're going to win this election in a landslide because now people got to see the differences between the two parties.
Sid Dinerstein, thanks so much for coming in. We really appreciate it. I'm sure we're going to be seeing more of Sid throughout the campaign season. Thank you so much, Sid.
Thank you.
Coming up next, we've got our roundtable to rate the Democrats' convention. Stay with us. He's not a Democrat, but he got to speak at the Democratic Convention. What can we expect from Charlie Crist? That's coming up next.
She's making her mark on the world.
We're just doing it one glass of lemonade at a time.
3 stories about people who said, I'm in.
Embrace your life while you have one to embrace.
I'm going to walk out of here and always remember you.
Her saying yes has inspired these people around the world to say yes. You have to say yes.
I'm ready.
You said yes. Go for it.
This is exactly it.
That is what saying I'm all in looks like on the premiere of The Jeff Probst Show.
Tomorrow at 3 on WPTV News Channel 5.
Getting into politics was an accident. It was something that I did because my children were in public education and a group of us wanted to make sure that public education was better than it was. I care about what I do. I'm passionate about trying to make a difference. I think government needs to assist those that need it the most. I mean, government is a safety net. Government doesn't need to be regulating everything. Government shouldn't be interfering in people's lives. What government needs to be doing is government needs to get out of the way for business, and it needs to help those that need help the most.
Ellen Bogdanoff, principled leader, fighting for Florida's future.
Sometimes you want to do nothing, but when you want to do everything, Sandals includes it all.
The time of my life. Do it all again. Do it all again. Do it all again. Do it all again.
Now get a $350 airfare credit, plus save up to 65%. Call your travel agent or 1-800-SANDALS. Certain restrictions apply.
Yoplait Light tastes great now. And feels great later. 20 delicious flavors of Yoplait Light, now at 90 calories each. Yoplait, it is so good.
Now time for our roundtable with News Channel 5 political analyst and coordinator of the American Studies program at Lynn University, Dr. Robert Watson, and Brian Crowley, the author of the Crowley Political Report. Gentlemen, let's get right to it. What do you think got the thumbs up, thumbs down at the convention? Brian, first to you, thumb up.
Well, I think that, you know, depending on which convention we're talking about, I think the Democratic convention, you know, I'll give a thumb up for Michelle Obama's speech. I'll give a thumbs up for Bill Clinton's speech, but I was sort of, I gave, the night of the speech, I gave the president a B- for his speech. I didn't find that there was a real takeaway from his speech for people to kind of hang on to and remember. He was talking to the converted, I thought, and I don't think he had as powerful a message as he could have. At one point, I was kind of hoping he'd drop the script and speak from the heart a little more.
Well, there was talk that he was going to talk as a chided political, you know, one without the arrogance, if you will, or the aloofness. I mean, Dr. Watson, what did you take from the president?
You know, actually, I mean, I thought the whole week, as conventions go, and I've watched these conventions gavel to gavel, as both of you do, and I've studied them historically. As the convention goes, I really think this is the best political convention in history. And I know I'm going to get a lot of hate mail from that. The letters or the emails are already coming in. But it really was. It really was. I thought there were a lot of memorable lines, from Castro to Michelle Obama to Bill Clinton, a lot of very memorable speeches. One of the themes I thought the Democrats were particularly effective of, the Republicans tended to focus on I. Romney will do this. Romney is one of you. Whereas the Democratic theme was we. It was we. It was more inclusive. It's about you, and you allowed us to do that. So I thought just the middle-class theme, the we, was what was a more positive theme than the I. Second takeaway, the Republican convention. Who would have thunk this? We went a whole Republican convention without talking about Afghanistan, the military, soldiers, Iraq. That was always a major theme. Think about how brilliant Ronald Reagan was years ago on those themes. The advantage of going second for the Democrats is they made that a centerpiece, and it looked even more glaring, the fact that Romney really didn't address it.
Let me politely disagree with my good friend. I've been going to conventions since 1984, and I think there are a lot of them that were much more entertaining and informative than this one. You know, when I was in Tampa last week or the week before, you know, I didn't find it to be an overwhelming experience compared to earlier conventions that I've gone to. You know, I think these conventions, as many people before me have said, are largely infomercials. I suspect that while Bill Clinton was giving his speech, an awful lot of folks were watching NFL football on NBC. So it's.
I would say this: there's a couple goals going into the convention. One, you want to unite the party. I think they did that. Two, you want to energize the base. I think they did that. Three, you want to frame the key issues on the president's term. I think they did that. Four, you want to unveil sort of the next generation of leaders like Mayor Castro and others. I think they did that. So I think the Democrats can put a check mark in each one of their boxes. I don't think the Republican convention could hold up to it. It was nowhere nearly as good as Ronald Reagan's conventions, for example. But so I maintain that it was that.
Well, Gallup is suggesting that there was a poll on Friday from Gallup that showed Obama at 52% favorability and Romney at 48, so he's got a little bit of a convention bump out of it in that 3 to 4 point range. So measured by that, there's success. But really, we've just, with the end of the conventions, what we've done is we've started the clock for the general election. People are really going to start focusing in.
And back in the day, I mean, we all remember when you would get 5, 10 point bounce coming out of these conventions. But today, with the country so divided and so few people still undecided, if you get a 3 point bump, it's probably good. Romney got 1, 2 point bump, and the Democrats held theirs as soon as the Republicans were over to minimize any post-convention glow. So neither party's going to get a big bounce out of these conventions.
How would you feel the two candidates framed one another, or themselves, if you will, during their speeches, Brian?
You know, while I gave President Obama a B- on his speech, I would probably have given Mitt Romney a C+ on his speech. I thought that, you know, it's funny, both of the wives did far better than their husbands did, I think, in those speeches, and their surrogates tended to do far better. You know, I don't think they changed the game at all. I don't think anything is any different this week than it was 3 weeks ago with these two candidates. And we're going to see, you know, the campaign is going to be full throttle over the next 2 months. And the issues will remain largely around the economy. You know, the president got some mixed news on Friday when the unemployment figures came out, and the unemployment dropped from 8.3 to 8.1. That was good on the one hand, but the jobs that were added were far fewer than expected, so it was very mixed for the president. You know, the Republican strategist Mike Murphy said a week ago that the way he saw the campaign was that Barack Obama was in second place, and that Mitt Romney was in third place trying to get in first place. And I think that was the best way I've heard the campaign framed so far.
Yeah, you know, I think the irony is we just finished 2 weeks of campaigning, 2 weeks of all these great speeches and so forth, and we're probably exactly where we were before we went into them. These are the times. I do think the big difference in framing one another was you saw a more muscular Barack Obama. I think he was wise, although his speech didn't compare to Bill Clinton's, and I also believe Michelle's was better, as Ann Romney's was better than Mitt Romney's. But you saw a different approach by Obama. He didn't seek that lofty rhetoric, and I think he was wise not to, because there's too much economic pain. And remember, he's not just a candidate. As he told everyone, I'm now the president. He was much more presidential, but much more muscular, reminding people about bin Laden, reminding people about ending the war in Iraq. It was a much more muscular speech, and I think a more pragmatic speech, and a much more policy-focused speech.
I want to get your guys' opinion on this. Charlie Crist spoke at the convention, saying that Romney and Ryan not up to the task. He's the Republican, he's the independent, is he going to be a Democrat? How do you think the Charlie Crist role will play, if at all, here in Florida?
Well, I mean, there's a long history of this. We may remember that Joe Biden spoke at the Republican convention, having previously been the vice presidential nominee for the Democratic Party. What's the lesson in these two guys? That, you know, when they find out they're going to be defeated by their own parties, they're desperate to hang on to office, so they decide to become independents. And, of course, they've already been rejected by their own party, so then they start, you know, making love to the other party. You know, the biggest advantage that Charlie Crist has in running for governor is the weak field of Florida Democrats. The bench is very light. You know, there's a lot of talk that Alex Sink will run again. You know, she's run and lost. Her husband ran and lost. You know, you don't hear a lot of talk about, you know, new, young faces in the Florida Democratic Party, and that's the biggest job the Florida Democratic Party has for the next decade.
It was Joe Lieberman that ran and then went to Biden. Yeah,
oh, sorry, Joe Lieberman.
So one of those Joes.
No wonder you guys were confused.
Yeah, that's right. I was trying to kick you under the table, but usually kick me under the table.
That's right.
No, if there was a down point to the convention, it was Charlie Crist. He looked lost. Nobody was excited by his speech. Even the tweets from some of the political observers were really negative. There were more tweets about the color of his tan and looking more orange. And then there was one tweet from one of the prominent political observers during the week that Charlie Crist is standing out in the lobby hoping someone will come and interview him or talk to him. He was alone. So that was a real down point. I do agree with Brian. The Democratic field is so empty that almost any Democrat could run now. And Scott's so unpopular, almost any Democrat would have a chance. But Crist, I think his time is gone. One of the things that I thought was interesting about it, speaking of tweets, one of the new ways of measuring public opinion and who's hot and what's the buzz is how many tweets does something generate. The Democrats generated millions and millions and millions more tweets than the Republicans, and we're still counting. And many of the Republican tweets were just about Clint Eastwood and that debacle. So in terms of the tweet-o-meter, the Democrats won in the convention wars.
All right, gentlemen, we'll be back with more in just a moment. Now it's time for the Watson wrap-up and the Crowley closer. Dr. Watson?
We all agreed that the first ladies were probably better than their husbands, but that's not new. Back in 1940, when Franklin Roosevelt was going for his unprecedented third term, no one had done it. In Philadelphia, Eleanor Roosevelt went to the convention and calmed everybody and probably gave the best speech of the convention. So history repeats itself.
Right.
Well, this week we lost a real statesman and a friend to people in South Florida and throughout Florida when former Senate President Phil Lewis died. He left office in the 1980, but he stayed actively involved in Florida issues and was on the Board of Regents, and is very highly thought of, and he was a real gentleman and the kind of person in public service that you want to see.
Gentlemen, thank you as always for your time, and thank you for spending time with us on today's To The Point. President scheduled to be in town today. If you'd like to send us a comment about the show, just go to our website, WPTV.com. Enjoy the rest of your day.